In the last episode of History Traveler, we kicked off our series on the Guadalcanal campaign at Red Beach, where the 1st Marine Division landed unopposed on August 7, 1942. The Guadalcanal campaign was a multi-dimensional conflict. While the Marines and later the Army were engaged with the Japanese on the ground, there was a fight that was going on in the skies above. At Henderson Field, the Seabees were at work building the infrastructure while constantly under fire. But one of the most dangerous places to be during the Guadalcanal campaign was out at sea. Throughout the fight for Guadalcanal, there was a constant fight that was happening on the water. So many ships were sent to the bottom of the ocean that the body of water north of Guadalcanal became known as Iron Bottom Sound. The first of these naval battles occurred on the night of August 8th going into August 9th at the Battle of Savo Island, which resulted in a major defeat for the U.S. Navy. When the Marines who were watching from Guadalcanal saw the Navy withdrawing, it gave birth to a myth that the Navy had abandoned the Marines at Guadalcanal. So before we continue walking the battlefields of Guadalcanal and Tulagi, we're going to join retired Marine Dave Holland, who is one of the leading experts on the Guadalcanal campaign, to address the question of whether or not the Navy abandoned the Marines on Guadalcanal.
So the abandonment myth, I could probably talk all day about how the Navy abandoned the Marines. Yes, it's a myth. Did they abandon the Marines? Literally, no, they didn't abandon the Marines. Did the Marines think they did? The perception? Of course. Did they have a right to think that? Of course. It's a controversy then, a controversy today, 50 years now, 100 years from now, it'll still be a controversy. Mainly revolving around Admiral Blackjack Fletcher, who's commander of the Expeditionary Force, and his pulling out before his intended time with his carriers. So at the Coro Conference on 27th of July, off Fiji, when they finally met for the first time, Vandergriff, who was the land commander, Turner was the amphibious force commander, Fletcher was the amphibious, the overall amphibious commander of the whole expedition. So they met with a guy called Admiral Callahan. Admiral Callahan was the staff officer to Admiral Gormley. So Admiral Gormley was an entire commander of the entire South Pacific. So he was the head guy, but he wasn't there at the time, which was, we'll see later that it came to impact the decision or non-decision made. So at the time, Fletcher, thinking about his carriers, says, look, I can't keep the carriers in one position for a short period of time because it's susceptible to Japanese air raids and submarine attacks. So I'll give you air coverage for your invasion for D+1. So obviously Vandergriff and Turner wasn't happy with that. They said, look, we need at least 4 to 5, possibly more days to offload our transports and more importantly our cargo ships. So we need more air coverage. Anyway, they went back and forth for a while, and Fletcher said, look, as he left, he goes, I'll give you D+2. So that's August the 9th. On the morning of August the 9th, he was going to be added there. So they realized that, yeah, okay, we'll have to deal with that. The one man who should have been at the conference was Admiral Gormley. So he wasn't there to make a decision. His representative, this Chief of Staff Callahan, didn't say a word. He only took notes. In fact, he's the only notes we have of that meeting is from Callahan. So the night of the 8th, late at night, was coming around. Fletcher had sent a message to Gormley and said, look, I'm running out of fuel. Half my fighter force is gone. I want to withdraw. So Gormley, thinking that he'd already spoke this over with Turner and Vandergriff, said, okay, do it. So basically Fletcher left a number of hours beforehand. So he was supposed to leave on the morning early morning of the 9th, but he left probably right after midnight. So he's left. Didn't bother to tell Turner. So Turner's found out through a message. So that's why he's called Vandergrift and Crutchley in the covering force to meet him off the Macaulay, which was his flagship. So that's why the HMS Australia, which was the flagship of Crutchley, moved back. So after the Battle of Savo Island, the covering force was gone. So what they was going to intended to do, that covering force was going to remain behind those 4 or 5 days to cover the offloading of the cargo ships. So once the covering force was gone, they had no choice but to withdraw. Turner said, look, I'll give you probably the midday or the afternoon of the night. I'll unload as much as I can, because most of the transport's already been offloaded with the troops. They just need to offload the cargo ships. So they basically said, look, we need to pull out. So they did. Now, the abandonment myth, if the Navy would have stayed there, all the ships would have, how good would the cargo been at the bottom of Savo Island? They did go, and they came back. Within a week, the APDs, which is the small fast attack destroyers, were running supplies, albeit limited supplies, for New Caledonia, nightly. Kind of like the Japanese did later in the campaign. Then after the 21st, when the airfield was going, they still had some supplies started to come in by air. And those APDs had continuous supply runs. Then on the 18th of September, when the 7th Marines come in, there was a big supply run. Now, abandonment myth, the Marines at the time, most of them didn't even know about the outcome of Savo Island. Some didn't even know till after the war, because they were keeping it, I guess, closed from the public, because it was bad for morale. Only thing they knew is the Navy wasn't there. They see the Japanese ships coming every day. They didn't have enough supplies, and they, who to blame? Let's blame the Navy. They abandoned us. One thing I'll say to that about the abandonment is, like I said at the very beginning, I think about 5,300 U.S. Navy died. So for every person that died on the land, roughly about 3 died at sea. There are still guys here that can say they never abandoned the Marines. There's over 1,000 of them out there that night, still manning the ships, protecting the Marines at their station right now. So they didn't abandon anyone. So I could go all day on this, but yeah, the abandonment myth is just what it is, a myth. So it wouldn't be fair to say that the U.S. Navy abandoned. It wouldn't be fair to the men who died in these waters to say that.